What is happening, people? It is your boy Jack, and today we are coming at you with another video where we're going to speak about one individual stock. I did a video like this on McDonald's recently, so if you want to see that, check it out after. But today we're going to be speaking about Delta Airlines, a company we've actually spoken about a couple of times on the channel, but we're just going to go into a lot more depth than we ever have before. There is so much buzz around airline stocks as a whole just because of what is happening in the world right now, and I'm going to talk about them as much as I possibly can today. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask you, please smash that like button for me. Drop me a sub and hit the bell button if you're new around here, and drop me a comment if you want to give me your feedback and give me your thoughts on Delta or any other airline stock or any other stock at all going forward. But anyway, let's get straight into the juicy stuff. So before we get into Delta as a specific, I think it's important to understand the airline industry as a whole. And the first thing I want to speak about is, are airlines cyclical, which we can see right here. And some of you may or may not know what a cyclical industry is. The airline industry is cyclical, which means that its business depends on the country's economic growth. So when things are doing well, airlines will do well, and when things are going poorly, the airlines will do poorly. And that's really important to know for the world we're living in right now. Obviously, we're all aware of the virus that's going on and how it's affecting the economy all over the world. So that immediately is a massive red flag on how Delta will most likely perform in the future. But what needs to be kept in mind is that we are long-term investors. What happens in the next couple of months or even the next year isn't too important. Our priority when choosing what stocks to purchase, do we believe in them in the long term, so in decades to come, and do we think we're getting them at a good price? But still, this is very important to keep in mind that this is a cyclical industry and it will go up and down depending on how the economy does. And then there are other things to be taken into effect. So the cost of labor, if there's any kind of political disputes going on in the world, the competition, it's a massively competitive industry to be in. So all of this is why it's a cyclical industry. There is so many things that have to be factored in when deciding if it's going to go well or poorly in the long term. And it can go extremely well or extremely poorly very quickly in an industry like this. And just to demonstrate that, we're looking at Boeing. We can see a 5-day change of plus 77.63%. The market opened 5 minutes ago and it's down nearly 7%. So this is a highly volatile space to be involved in. Let's just put it that way. Anything can happen in a matter of days here. A 77.6% change in 5 days is unprecedented. And just to put that into perspective, in the 1 month, it's still down 44.6% after that massive bounce back up. So that is the levels of volatility we're dealing with. It's not just your average company that's going to go 3 or 4% during these bad times. Crazy things happen in this industry. Now the company we're all actually interested in, and we're going to get into the facts and figures, a lot of the more in-depth stuff. But first of all, let's just have a quick look at their chart in the background while we speak. So we can see again a 5-day change of 40% here. It gives you an idea of just how volatile these stocks are. But then we'll go and have a look at their 3-month. And boom, we're still down pretty much 50%. So again, we can't get this point across enough. It's a crazy industry that is extremely volatile and is only going to get worse if the economy is to get worse, which it's more than likely will. So why is this happening now? It is simple. It's because people are afraid. People invest in the stock market not because of what happens today or yesterday. They invest because of what they think is going to happen next. That's how we make money. We need to be able to get into it when things are cheap so that we're in it at a nice price, and when things go back up, hopefully we make money. So people are obviously terrified. The people who already own positions in Delta, especially when it was up here, they are terrified as to what's going to happen next. So they're closing their positions to minimize any losses, to hope to get in there at a lower price. We know this to be true because just yesterday we got this record: 3.3 million Americans filed for unemployment as the US tries to contain COVID. This rose, beating the previous record of 695,000 in October 1982. So it absolutely mashed the record to pieces 5 times over, more or less. And what happened in the stock market yesterday? It rose. This is where we opened on the 26th, and this is where we finished off. So despite that horrific news, the market as a whole rose. So a lot of what is going to happen is already priced into the market because people are expecting the worst. That is why people are selling already. So what this means is that once their poor earnings do come out, things along those lines, the stock may not actually been hit quite as hard because people are already expecting it, and that is why they're selling, because we try to predict what will happen in the future. So Delta haven't actually done anything particularly wrong just yet. You know what I mean? Compared to what they were doing 6 weeks ago, nothing's changed. It's not their fault. It is this worldwide pandemic's fault. It's already being factored into the price. Now, there are so many facts and figures out there that I just open up a Google Sheets and put what I believe to be some of the more important ones into it, or else you could just look at these things all day long. There is genuinely so much. But right now, what we're looking at is we're looking at Delta Airlines and their numbers as of December 2019 in billions. These are the most recent numbers we have for Delta, of course. So, right, their total revenue was 47 billion. Their cost of revenue was 34.09 billion. Their gross profit, that means, was 12.916 billion. So off to a good start. They have a gross profit at the very least. And then their operating expenses at that time were 6.26 billion, leaving them with an operating income of 6.65 billion. So again, good start. Now we're going to have a look at the assets and the liabilities, which are two, in my opinion, of the biggest factors of whether this is an investment to make now or not, because they are going to be facing some seriously hard times. So we have to ask ourselves, will they be able to get through it, or is there a potential of going bankrupt? And I think that has to be a question at the forefront of your mind when investing in a company like this that is so cyclical and is so risky in unprecedented times like we're in. So straight into it, their current assets, the assets they have available to them within the next 12 months is 8.25 billion essentially. This is their cash on hand, their inventory, those kind of things. Then their long-term assets, they have 56.28 billion. These are the things like their planes, their equipment, their land, all of those other things that you can't just sell on the spot like that. It's not lying around in cash. You would have to make it into cash basically. And this leaves them with total assets of 64 billion 532 million. Now let's compare that to our liabilities. So our current liabilities are 20 billion compared to our current assets of only 8.2 billion. That is not great by any means. Their long-term liabilities, on the other hand, look ever so slightly nicer at 28.9 billion compared to our long-term assets of 56.28 billion. So they have a lot of collateral if they do need to get more debt to survive in the short term. And the banks are going to want to bail them out. It's evident why. Why would they want all of their planes if nobody's flying planes? So their current liabilities are sitting at 49 billion. Our current total assets are at 64.5 billion. And then their net income for last year was 4.7 billion. So do with these numbers as we will. Obviously, one really concerning thing is their current assets in comparison to their current liabilities. We have much more cash on hand than they can pay their liabilities. So they are going to have to somehow raise capital, whether it be through debt or some other means, which is not a good thing to have to do in a time like this. But interest rates are 0%. Woohoo! Now I made this here just because it's something to me that I really don't like to see. So this is a company we've just established are struggling money-wise. And what happened last year, right? They got short-term debt issued of 1.75 billion, okay? They bought back over 2 billion worth of stocks. So they went and took out debt just to buy back their own stocks. They're already struggling. This to me is a red flag. Why would you go out and take debt just to buy your own stocks? I really don't like the fact that this happened, but every company is always going to have their red flags. This was just one little point that I wanted to show. Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Definitely not for a company like Delta. There are red flags. I want you all to know as well, I do actually own stock in Delta as of right now. And while I'm recording this, the market's been open 20 minutes and we're down 7.3%. Why do I always record these videos when the market opens and I make myself look at the stock charts? But you guys know I always like to have a good look at the stock chart. I like to just go have a look at, say, our 1 month, which obviously right now can be expected to be absolutely horrible. Our 1 year, which again, it was quite steady, and then boom, it was horrible. Our 5 year, we've seen some nice steady growth, and then our max is one that I always absolutely love to have a look at, and we can compare like what happened during the recession, things like that. So we can see during the recession, boom, massive dip, pretty much what, 75-80% altogether. And then there was a beautiful, beautiful period of growth, and now a dip that has never been seen before. A dip that has absolutely never been seen before. But it definitely has potential to go lower if we just compare it to what happened back during the Great Recession. And a question I always like to put forward as well, because we're analysing the stocks based on what's happening right now. If I was doing this exact same analysis back here, back at the end of 2016 or even the start of 2017, would things be different and would I have seen them as a good buy? More than likely, yes, because of the circumstances we were in. And that's why it's important to look at it from a long-term perspective. The business's model has not changed. That's something I say in nearly every video. If they get through this time, they are still a great long-term company in my opinion. So I don't like to get too caught up in the most recent figures because that doesn't paint a very broad picture. Now I want to speak about their dividend quickly because that's something we always like to talk about on the channel because we are primarily dividend investors, okay? Now we're going to have a look. During the past 12 months, their dividend share growth rate was 14.9%. During the past 3 years, their average growth rate was 30.6%, and the past 5 years, their average growth rate was 40% pretty much. Now, it's important to know, okay, that they've only been paying their dividend for, I believe it was 9 years, so they have not been around very long. And that leaves the question, could that dividend get cut? My answer, I genuinely believe yes. I very much so believe it will get cut. Who knows if it'll just be lowered, if they'll pay out less dividends, or if it will completely go until things are back in a good place. But what we've seen from this dividend growth as well is that when the company is doing good, it wants to reward its investors. So again, when we get out of the bad times, if they do have to cut their dividend or stop paying it temporarily, I believe that we will see growth similar to this, and they will ultimately pay out dividends again. And we can see that Delta have actually increased their dividend faster than any of these other big airline companies over the last 5 years. So that's very nice to see. Their dividend yield as today is 5.36%. It was only, I believe, just under 2% a matter of a month ago. It's because obviously the share price has dipped so low that it's now such a high percent. So I don't see a world where that percentage keeps up. But again, we have to look at it from a long-term perspective. We might not get dividends for a year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows how long, but eventually I believe they will pay a very, very nice dividend. And I will be getting paid this dividend, so that's nice for me at the very least. So there was a lot of conflicting information there over the last few minutes. Like, it looks great, then it looks terrible, it looks really risky, then it looks safe. So why do I think this actually is a stock to buy now? Or maybe not necessarily today, but very soon. Well, let's just have a look at how airlines have actually grown over the past while. So we're looking at a graph that shows the world annual traffic expressed in passengers carried over the last 40 years, from 1975 to 2015. It was the best graph I could find. But we can see that airline growth has grown pretty much every single year. Even during the Great Depression, it was going up ever so slightly, then it boomed up. There was only 1 or 2 times over the past 50 odd years where it hasn't grown. And we can now see that between 2019 and 2038, the number of airline passengers is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 4.6%. So as a whole, it is still most definitely a growing industry, and Delta is one of the big players in this absolutely massive growing industry. Again, I'll bring it back to what I said later. If we were doing this analysis 3 or 4 years ago, would we have thought it was a good company to buy? And more than likely the answer would be a definite yes. So just because we're falling on tough times now doesn't mean anything has changed from a long-term perspective. It means that we're getting a chance to get in at a really good price. Whenever you decide to invest in a company for the long term, it has to be expected that situations like this will come up. And it has to be expected that, again, I'm investing in them now. In another 30 or 40 years, or maybe 5 years, 10 years, who knows, maybe another 9 months down the line, there's going to be another massive thing that causes a crash that we're seeing right now. These things have to be accounted for when you invest, and that's why our job as investors is just to get in at a good price in companies that we believe will grow in the long term. That is our job. Our job is not to try and predict if they'll do really well or poorly over the next 6 months. That's not what we do. Nobody can do that effectively, or else they would be the richest person in the world. Here's something to look at. Warren Buffett bets big on airlines. He boosted his company's stake in Delta Airlines again. He acquired 976,000 Delta shares in February for roughly $45.3 million. That means he paid about $46.50 per share on average in his most recent investment into Delta, and he thought that that was a good price to buy them at in the long term. As of recording this right now, they're just below $30. If he thought they were a good buy at that price, imagine how good of a buy he thinks they are at this price from a long-term investor's point of view, and from one of the best long-term investors in history's point of view. He's not worried about the fact that they could go down lower, because he believes ultimately it may take 5 years, may take 10 years, they will make him money. And that is why I believe in them, because I believe in them as a company. They are leaders in the airline industry, one of the biggest industries in the entire world. There's amazing growth potential and forecasted growth rates. A man like Warren Buffett is willing to bet this big on them. To me, it seems like an amazing opportunity. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to shed some light on Delta as a whole, the airline industry as a whole, and why I am investing in them and will continue to invest in them. If you did enjoy it, again, please just smash the video a like if you haven't yet, subscribe if you're new, let me know your thoughts below, and until the next one guys, peace.